minute. Just give me
Good evening, all. So today we are in the 87th session of Praktani Adda, and today we have Kingshuk Datta from 2003 batch, who will be talking about a very niche topic related to architecture. And joining us to moderate the session, we have Pratyush Pranav and Prashant Tibrewal from the same batches. And so, without much ado, I would like to invite Pratyush Pranav to start the session, and then Prashant to open the session, and afterwards we will hear our speaker for the day. Pratyush, you can take over now.
Right, Pratyush. Before you come in, let me give a non-technical intro of Kingshuk, and then you can take up the technical intro as a scientist yourself, not to undermine the science that Kingshuk is going to bring. But those who are new to the Adda, so of course this is a ritual that we have at Vidyapit. Vidyapit is our school that we all studied in, and we bring in some of the most accomplished people from different parts of work, different parts of life, and open up to ideas that we haven't explored till now sometimes, or ideas that we would like to explore further. And in that process, today we have Kingshuk Datta, who is an extremely accomplished architect, design enthusiast, or of course, the less I speak, the better, because Pratyush is going to get into more details about his work. But I remember that my first company logo was designed by Kingshuk, so that was something that always stays, and it gave a good start to my entrepreneurial journey. So for more context, Kingshuk, I and Pratyush, we studied in the same class right from 1996 to almost 2003. So that's a long time ago, but that was the most foundational years of our life together. So on that note, let me also invite Pratyush to tell us more about. Yeah, so let me invite Pratyush to tell us more about what Kingshuk has accomplished or explored during these years, and then we will dive further into the very interesting and intriguing topic that already has been published, and there's a lot of excitement that has already been created around.
So thank you, Prashant. That after that introduction, I doubt if I have something better to say, but the fact that Kingshuk, Prashant, Kingshuk being the main center of focus here right now, we're at the same school, all of us. Most of us here belong to the same school, so we have seen each other since our childhood. And let it not be an observer and confirmation bias when I say Kingshuk is one of the most brilliant and creative people I have ever met in my life. And all of us here, I think a lot of people will agree this with me. In my case, it's even closer to my heart, Kingshuk's creativity, because he has literally Christianed me. He has given me my name. And all of us who know what I'm talking about, we already know what we are talking about here. Beyond the names and Christianing, I remember seeing extraordinary design details of Kingshuk since, as far as I can remember, even at the time when we had no understanding of what design details mean. Kingshuk has been a fantastic art creator, designer, and in general, a very creative guy. So it makes sense that he chose this very difficult profession of architecture, because Kingshuk likes to get into difficult things. And I call architecture a very difficult profession also because of conversations with Kingshuk and a particular thing that stayed in my mind for quite a long time that Kingshuk mentioned. We do talk about aesthetics, but we keep aesthetics to temples, buildings, and we do not really think of aesthetics as a contributing factor to our peace and our well-being as a society in our day-to-day activities and our day-to-day architectures. And in this regard, the topic that Kingshuk brings on the table today about the revival of ancient architectures In a sense, something like this happened in Europe already, but with a twist. After Middle and Dark Ages, after the Dark Ages, when Europe starts with the Middle Ages, is when architecture, Renaissance, architecture, art, and Renaissance in general started in Europe. This period is sort of missing in India because our Renaissance of culture and architecture dates long back. And since then, because of the nature of the society here, things have sort of ballooned up. And in
Right
the
now because I'm coughing.
We also have a very young dear friend. I'm not sure where, but maybe we can keep our mics mute for a moment till the speaker is speaking.
It's good to hear a child's voice.
Yes, yes. That's right. That's right. So I'm very happy to see that it's not only boring adults who are a part of this conversation here, and once in a while we would like to hear our younger colleagues also. Maybe we reserve it for the end, for the question and answer session. And to briefly illustrate about Kingshuk's academic achievements, Kingshuk did a bachelor's in architecture from Sir J.J. College of Architecture in India. It's one of the most reputed architecture colleges in not only India, I think it has a name all over the world. After his bachelor's, Kingshuk moved over to Oxford Brookes University in the UK for a master's in architecture, and currently Kingshuk is a doctoral candidate working on, as far as I understand, I'm not looking at the things that he has sent me, he is working on the digital revival of ancient Hindu, Jain, and Buddhist architectures. And in my personal opinion, this is a very important project for the progeny, and to be able, digitization is something that is increasingly being adopted in many fields, and architecture is one of the most important fields where digital archiving and record keeping may be one of the most important directions to take, especially considering the rich heritage and culture and background of architecture that Indian subcontinent in general provides. And so we hope that with the work of Kingshuk, we are able to revive our understanding and our appreciation of our old architecture. And with this, let me stop and introduce Mr. Datta to the floor, and he takes it over from there. So Kingshuk, all over to you. Please enlighten us with what's going on in the world of architecture. Thanks.
Thank you, Pratyush. Wow, that's humbling, and now I have pressure to perform. So basically, I will not try to enlighten any one of you. I'm nobody to do so, but rather raise questions that we probably do not have an answer for. So basically, it begins with my hatred of being taught history at school, which we all have suffered. That continued on to the undergrad days of history of architecture as well. And as we know what karma is, I ended up becoming a student of, voluntarily ended up becoming a student of history of architecture of the region we come from. So, which is exactly also why I try to avoid calling it Indian temple architecture or Hindu temple architecture, because when we say India, then we understand the geopolitical boundary. But when you say Hindu-Buddhist-Jaina architecture as a supercluster understanding of a much larger concept, beyond just architecture as building, but architecture as imagination of extremely complex, extremely large numerics and timelines and spatial, cosmic level spatial scales, distilled and anthropomorphized into entities, concepts, ethics, and visuals that the lesser mortals, us human beings, can understand within our short lifespan. It's only in the late 20th century that our lifespans, because of early childhood healthcare, has increased to 16. Usually until 1947, thanks to the British colonial gifts, our lifespan was usually till 30 to 35 years of age, which then brings me to the point that the temples that happened, prolific temple building that happened between 6th and 13th century, largely in the South Asian continent. Each of these temples it took around 150 years to build those temples. And now compare the average lifetime of a person, which is 30 to 35. So basically, a 13-year-old boy joins a workshop guild, trains for 5, 6, 10 years, and at 20 becomes a sort of a carpenter or a Vishwagya, Sthapati, whichever trade their natural aptitude lies, and then only gets another 10 to 15 years to build. So then the question comes, how was architecture built, and the information on which the architecture is built, how did the knowledge transfer happen? Right. So in this case, it becomes far more interesting that the production of space making, that's the act and the culture of space making, as a formal deep play, exceeding human lifetimes by 5 to 10 times. So basically 10 generations, or 4 kings built it. So the great grandfather king had a dream from Lord Shiva, where Shivji comes and says, oh, son, you will find me over there, and go there and find my Shila. Hence Shivji is also endearingly called as Swayambhu, the one who creates himself. He comes out of nowhere. But the great grandfather king who had the dream and started the project never saw the temple. His son, the grandfather, also never saw the temple. The father never saw the temple. Probably the great grandchild king completed the temple. So the production of space making exceeds human lifetimes, and thereby the knowledge transfer could not have happened using conventional modes of media transfer or knowledge transfer using media that we use today. So they were not built using drawings, which, coming to Pratyush's reference of Renaissance, drawing is that act. Of course, human beings have been drawing and painting even before history was being a record, like the cave paintings of Altamira. So expression of divine beauty through earthly acts, and thereby earthly actions, and hunting scenes and all of that. The art is not a choice that human beings can choose to study in school or practice on Sunday picnics. Art is a fundamental human need. A child sings before it can speak. A child dances before it can walk. A child makes art before it can write. So all of these are forms of human expression to tell, oh, this is what I observe of life, and thereby I make a mark, or I sing a song, or I write a poem to express my deeply spiritual effect of this, the effects of seeing what is happening around my world. So, Pablo Picasso saw the devastation of the Spanish Civil War and painted Guernica. So I think in order to produce, in order to have a creative blossom, the spiritual and the mortal suffering is almost a prerequisite, which is why we never have any kings or any prince or princesses who have become great artists. Though some of them, yes, have been great patrons of art, hence the patronage of temples and treaties and books that we have. So this is a presentation from my doctoral colloquium, but a lot has happened then, but it's difficult to keep compiling all of them. So I have a host of various different medias on, which I'll take you through. I'll run it fast. So this is the word we use every day, style. So is everything just style? And it's part of my PhD project, self-funded, towards a procedural and computational ontology framework for reinterpreting Hindu-Buddhist-Jaina architecture and decolonizing design epistemes across South and Southeast Asia. Why do I say decolonizing? Because a lot of these temples, the manuscripts, the written scripts as well, the language were lost because of various geopolitical scenarios, and of course a lot of migratory movements. And but then came the colonialists and part of course, they have a devastating economic and spiritual effect thanks to the multiple famines they have deliberately managed. But again, that becomes a separate expertise altogether. But what happened is late 19th century onwards, after the Bengal Renaissance, Indologists appeared within the British colonial presence in India, who kind of started to fall in love with what they found, what our ancestors had done. But then they are like, okay, we will do this and we'll find it out and we'll study this. And I totally appreciate the work that they have done. Every scientist lays on the shoulders of giants, of course, but there is also that angle of, oh, we are here on Her Majesty's orders, and we are going to tell you how great your culture was. And there's that, there's that colonial misreadings and exotification that happens. Hence, everything is called a style. It's like it is as problematic and as wrong to say we are a style of Indians. Indians are a style of humans. That is not scientific taxonomy, to say the least, right? I'll give you a point. Nope, not this one. So again, this is a structure tree of knowledge. So culture is one of the key ingredients, but of course, everything is a zoom out, and the lens zooms out on any scientific body. Okay, so I'll begin with the idea of knowledge and actually the idea of ignorance as well. And of course, a British poet wrote this poem called The Elephant and the Six Blind Men of Hindustan, but he is not the first. There has been Sanskrit Upanishadic texts and medieval Jaina texts, and of course in Buddhism as well, which here in the central picture it says Ekantavadi Saptandha Purusha, Eka Antavadi Sapta Andha Purusha, 7 blind men touching an elephant, right, who can only describe what they're seeing. And on the top in the red text it says Anekantavadi Sadrishtayo Gurava. On many views, on pluralistic view, 2 wise men are looking at the elephant in the room, right? And such a expression and such visual also existed in Japan as well, as we see from the third picture. Of course, this is in a Brooklyn museum. Blind men appraising an elephant. So the ideas of divinity, I'm not going to call God. I'm no expert. So the idea of knowledge is very abstract, and we can only touch small portions of it and kind of distill it into formats that is comprehensible for the rest of us. So abstract philosophy becomes maths, applied maths becomes physics, applied physics becomes chemistry, applied chemistry becomes biology, applied biology becomes medicine. And on that same similar scale that I showed earlier, of the tree of knowledge, what it comes out is like that Hindu-Buddhist-Jaina visual cultures or philosophical schools of thought kind of anthropomorphizes abstract concepts and cosmically large numbers so that we, the lesser mortals, can read, reflect, and perhaps begin to understand what knowledge is. And the art and the whole idea of space making, that is architecture, is basically philosophy is anthropomorphized into mythology. It's everywhere, and this is not exclusive to Hindu-Buddhist-Jaina supercluster, but also you can see it in Egypt, ancient Egyptian, ancient Mesopotamian, Babylonian, Chinese, Aztecs, everywhere, like anywhere you deep dive, you will find that there are people who have looked up at the sky and asked, where are we from? Who are we? And where are we heading? But architecture is a small portion of that eternal questions. But also, to be honest, architecture is our longest surviving, oldest proof of us being on this planet. For example, the pyramids. So when, and a very interesting factoid that Cleopatra is closer to the iPhone in timeline than she is to the pyramids. So when she became the pharaoh of unified Egypt, the pyramids were already around 1,750 years old. That's how old they are, right? So yeah, so I'll proceed later. And this is the Nataraja idol gifted from Government of India to CERN. It's situated between building number 39 and 40, and why? And of course, there is that cosmic parallel between the concepts of Shaiva Shakta traditions and between what contemporary astrophysics have come to kind of experiment with, or kind of like all of these, all the science that we know, in my little understanding, are currently placeholders till something better replaces that, right? So, and it's easier to kind of do a reverse abstraction, sort of a representational, what can I say, representational, framework that allows us to wrap our minds around concepts that we do not fully understand. And one of my favorite quotes by Richard Feynman: "Study hard what interests you in the most undisciplined, irreverent, and original manner possible." So the PhD is that attempt. And yeah, so summarizing, the synopsis is that temples within the Hindu-Buddhist-Jaina supercluster of architecture were conceived and built on a framework of procedural rules. Expert literature done by today by scholars in the 19th century onwards have elucidated this through interpretative meaning of their iconography. What does a temple look like? Which is true, because in the same analogy that we know our family members and our friends through how they look and how they act, we do not recognize them through viewing their intestines, right? So what seems as shallow and surface is not without meaning. It carries all the meaning. So my basically rupa and pratirupa, right? And these are, so what appears at the surface level is also important, because it tells us what possibly could be beyond the surface, or beyond the the depths beyond. So only in some specific scholarly work with the Hindu-Buddhist architecture are the processes behind space making explicitly disseminated. It's not as explicit, and that remains to be the largest research gap, because most of the scholarly work and books that we read about temples are written by art historians and archaeologists, by finding what existed before. Of course, they are in kind of a dilapidated state. And as we know, further is their digital documentation. So now we have a new multiverse, the whole cyberverse, that is the digital space. And hardly any of it, HBJA exists in the digital realm. There is a lot of work, but not as prolific, not as exhaustive as the act and the craft of Hindu-Buddhist-Jain architecture itself. And almost negligible till date, almost zero, but not entirely zero, is the semantic ontology of this specific domain, which basically means what do they mean, and how is meaning made through the art of, or the formal deep play of space making. Why do I say deep play? Deep play comes from the reference of 1973 essay on Bellini's notes on Bellini's cockfights by Clifford Geertz, who saw that men and landlords and even kings used to fight their roosters, and whoever wins, and there was a big gambling and betting, and it was also establishment of social order, which is basically like men are not fighting, the kings are not fighting, but instead two birds are fighting. So it's like it's an extension. It's like an extension of personality. So the king's rooster or the landlord's rooster. So the animal, the bird, the poor bird, ended up representing in a fight social status that it did not choose. So that's and human beings understand this, and machines don't, not yet. So generally, as we know, Vastu Shastra and Shilpa Shastra, when I say Vastu Shastra, I do not mean the contemporary commercial practice of Vastu, which in my understanding so far is absolute quackery. Absolute quackery. It's as problematic as homeopathy. But often Vastu Shastra and Shilpa Shastra, this umbrella of these are not single texts, but a large body of treaties, commentaries, and critiques written over centuries by all forms of scholarship. So space making within the HBJA are essentially forms of analog computing. Why do I say analog computing, as in not digital computing, as we understand the word computer, but rather the fact that human beings are computing in terms of space making. I hate to come to make this analogy, but I have to in order to explain it to my usual audience. Space making Hindu-Buddhist-Jaina temple architecture becomes like it's like 3D Lego for ancient people, right? So because you build a castle with your friends using Lego, and thereby the making of the castle gives you the sense of joy and sense of meaning. That's purpose enough. When children make sandcastles by the sea beach and invite other children to play with it, it's not to show off, it's to share the joy of making a sandcastle that will not be there in a couple of hours, as the waves will wash it away, and the transience of it. But just because it's transient does not mean it's any less meaningful. So meaning is the pursuit of joy in building space or building anything is meaning enough. So my purpose is that these embedded knowledge systems should be brought into the realms of digital deconstruction and reconstruction, and further into the realms of semantic segmentation in AI, and to build a framework that, so what can I do? What can I do within the scope of my limited capabilities and the resources, I mean, the lack of resources as well? We clearly understand that such a comprehension or an appreciation does not, unfortunately, exist in the post-colonial South Asia, even till today, which is why I'm doing the PhD where I am. No one was interested to fund, no one was interested to listen to it more than 1 hour. Anyway, so basically build a framework that would enrich and mature into an encyclopedic repository of design epistemes through a decolonized lens. I'm not looking at it from what the expert Indologists say, but rather what did the Shilpin and the Sthapati and the Vishwagya crafted together and played in a formal deep play. So this is the Indic sphere of influence, spread of Hinduism and the spread of Buddhism. Of course, spread of Buddhism and then followed by spread of Hinduism 2.0, as I would say. There was a revivalist time as well. This is again for non-experts, but as we understand, it started in central North India, but that is not the only starting point. There were various points of Hindu-Buddhist-Jaina architectures. Buddhism, of course, has a specific starting point where the Lord Gautama the Buddha was born, but Hinduism did not necessarily start in India. It extends up till the Caucasus in Central Asia, Europe border. And how did I come to know that the Sanskrit word for Caspian Sea is Kashyap Sagar, right? It's the same scholar, a divine scholar as well, who after whom Kashmir is made, is named. So one can say that Hinduism precedes Hinduism, which kind of speaks back to the act of self-similarity and fractalism in Hindu temples, which we see in later slides. So these are the range of temples dedicated to Shiva and a couple of them to Vishnu, because I'm focusing on Shiva to begin with, because I have to pinpoint a particular point eventually to begin. Otherwise, it's way too big to be okay. So it's way too big to be completed by one lifetime. It's impossible, and hence it's difficult for an ignorant blind man like myself to comprehend the whole elephant. So these are three examples of Hindu, Buddhist, and Jaina temples. Of course, the first one is the Ranakpur temple. The second one is the one in the middle is the Khajuraho Khandariya Mahadev temple. I don't know why it has been renamed as Kandariya Mahadev temple. It's not Kandariya, it's Khandariya, the cave dweller, and hence it explains why the temple is a dual shell temple because it celebrates Shiva as a cave dweller. Shiva is the only god, the meta god of the Hindu-Buddhist pantheon, who does not live in the heavens. He does not care about that. He lives on earth in Mount Kailash and or Mount Meru. And that's supposed to be the center of the universe for those who believe in it. And the third is Prambanan temple with some ruins, but it's pre-restoration photograph, which has been both a Hindu temple and a Buddhist temple as well. So there's a lot of syncretic exchange. So a Hindu temple became Buddhist temple and then became back to the Hindu temple. So one can see that though they are formally, first of all, they are all built out of stone. So they are dependent on the material performance of that single material. But Hindu-Buddhist temples existed way before stone temples. They were built in timber and with other materials, and those do not exist because they weathered and they finished up. They kind of got destroyed, and hence scholars must have realized, okay, we need to build temples as a spatial play that will survive for centuries, if not millennia, and stone temples luckily have. So yeah. Again, this is again Prambanan Buddhist architecture. So the spires are reminiscent, though the architecture is as per the Vastu rules, actually much more stricter adherence to Vastu rules. But the smaller spires, you can see that they are looking like Buddhist stupas, right? So hence you see the syncretic elements, and of course in the restoration, one can see clearly where my cursor is the new stones that are built. So in order to complete the puzzle, right, because not all puzzle pieces were recovered or restored or were not strong enough. And then Hindu temple architecture, which is Khandariya Mahadev temple. So this is the inner Pradakshina Path, which is the left photograph, and this amazingly lit inner wall. So which is why the temple is called Khandariya Mahadev. So Mahadev is inside the Khandahar, he is inside the cave, and then there's a double layer. We'll come to the plan later. Though it is not my primary case study, but it is one of the case studies, because in order to build that ontological framework, I have to compare, basically these three pens. They do different things and different color and different sizes, but they are, in terms of the ontological framework, in terms of semantics, they are same. They are all pens, right? But their size, their color, and what they do are nuancedly different. Same goes for the temples as well. So that's Jaina temple. I mean, profusely elaborated, embroidered, and such amazingly flamboyant artwork on it. That the level, the depth of iconography, the literal depth of iconography and sculptural work is so deep that one loses the as a lay viewer, as a child who visited Mount Abu and Ranakpur, it was very difficult to realize where geometry ends. So a straight line, a straight column does not remain straight anymore because of the profuse proliferation of sculptural work. The form abstracts onto the lines between form and void, solid and void, kind of dissipates. Which these are the early things that got my interest in architecture, actually. But also I realized that the way the history of architecture was taught, is still being taught in India, is dismal and demotivating. So primarily in a selfish way, I could say that the purpose of my PhD is not to impress some old men and women, but rather to present a possibility to the ones yet to come, to the younger generation, that temple spatial architecture or any form of space making in any culture is not only a wealth of that specific culture, but an achievement of the human species. We make meaning by making space, and space making should be learned and understood and spiritually felt, not spiritually, not as in religiously, but of the spirit by everyone. And hence, I would like to leave the path open for others to come and explore and find out new things. So I'm not intending to at all to be the best of many. That is not the purpose. That is not the possibility either. I would like to be the first of many. That would be a decent enough life goal. So these are Hindu temples in all over India, west, east, south, and central, and of course upper north as well, which shows, and all of these temples are dedicated to Shiv, largely Shivji. The one drawing is the Bhojpur Ashapuri Bhojeshwara temple that was unbuilt, and it is a conjectural reconstruction by Professor Adam Hardy, and this would have been the largest by volume Shiva temple in the world. Was it completed? It would have dwarfed Brihadeshwara temple, which is this one. So the Bhojeshwar, so they are not to scale, right? So because when I have to show them in pictures, I cannot show them proportionately, because then otherwise one temple would be very small, the other temple would be very big. So it kind of it brings all of them to a unit of one. So they all look the same size, but they are not. Next slide. It's temple of, again, dedicated to Shiv and Shakti as well in east of India, which is built of east of India and Burma in Bagan. Again, continuing with the pluralistic diversity in design languages, and of course the signature style of the particular school or particular workshop or guild. I'll go to the next slide. These are temples in Iran and Pakistan and in Nepal. Again, Shiva temples, Shivala. So back there they call it Shivala, and there's a Vishnu temple in Bandar Abbas in Hormuz. Yes, and Swayambhunath temple and Bhaktapur temple in Nepal. Again, same mythology, same cult, school, same god. Different folk tales, but a completely different formal output. The Swayambhunath temple in Kathmandu almost definitely looks more like a Buddhist stupa rather than a temple. So now I'll come back to my case study city or location, which is Bhubaneswar. And all of these temples are within 15 kilometers of each other within the Ekambra Kshetra, which is the old town of Bhubaneswar, and that whole entire town is UNESCO World Heritage Site. I keep visiting there almost every year. So in order, they are Lingaraj Temple, Rajarani Temple, and the Jagamohan of Konark. So that's not the main temple, that's the audience hall. Konark's Rekha Deul is destroyed or dilapidated. We don't know the reasons. That there are a lot of conspiracy theories about it. Anyway, and in the second row, there's Parashurameshwar temple, that is 6th and 7th century, then Mukteshwara, and then there is Varahi temple, again a form of the mother goddess, and this is Khakara. People, even scholars end up mispronouncing it as Khakara temple. It's not Khakara, it's Khakara. Khakara means Kha Akara, in the shape of the sky. Basically, the forms are so proliferated, it starts looking like clouds. And then the last one is Vaitala Devula. This is also another Khakara type temple. I must mention that the words language, type, school, mode, and style are different classifiers, which we will come to see in the next slides. So one can see that within 15 kilometers of each other, the formal experiments of the craftsmen, of the Shilpin, is so distinctly different. In fact, the center picture, the top, that is Rajarani Temple, which is my prime case study is not even a proper, is not even a so-called pure Kalinga school temple. It is a Shekhari Latina type temple, and which basically also tells us, and based on Professor Hardy's lecture a couple of years ago, that temple builders, the Sthapatis and the Shilpins, they were very aware of what other schools were building in other parts of India. So they were not sitting in there, as Swami Vivekananda says, the Hindu sits in his own little well and thinks the whole universe is his own little well. But all craftsmen, all art, all forms of space makers, they were aware of what other schools were building, and they wanted to bring that and look at it. So temple building is not a rigid, boring, regimental, regressive practice that we have come to be taught about it, but rather it's really experimental. Just to clarify, that's blueberry juice, nothing else. It's really good. So next, another way to look at temples is their state of existence. So the first picture is, so it is additive, status, unassembled, and the instance is Bhojeshwara temple, Ashapuri, which is not built. So craftsmen would build those models, build the smaller components, and then assemble it. So it's additive. The second is very interesting, that is subtractive and potentially additive both, which is incomplete, and the instance is Shiva temple in Masroor in Himachal Pradesh. So it is cut out of a single rock, but it starts to look, it intends to look like a freestanding temple, right? So that's very interesting mixture of both subtractive processes, but also additive build-up, both. And the third is what we all know, very extremely famous Kailasa temple, Ellora cave number 16, which is completely subtractive. Absolutely, some 20 million, I mean, I forget the number, I'm so sorry. Some 20 million tons of stone were removed, and none of that debris is found in anywhere within 100, 150 kilometers of that, of the Ellora caves. Where did all that stone go? And subtractive forms of space making is extremely difficult, because one wrong hammer and the entire project is gone. Right. So you can imagine how difficult it must have been for 6th, 7th century craftspeople to carve out an entire hill out of one solid rock and not make a single mistake. It's amazing. It's mind-boggling, when you try to wrap your heads around what human beings wanted to achieve, and what resources that they have. It's amazing, and it's not just about Hindu-Buddhist temple architecture. It is seen in Mayan and Aztec, in Machu Picchu, and all of these places. That the human response to the aesthetic response to a utilitarian purpose based on a spiritual affinity. It's amazing. It's mind-blowing. I wish I could study world architecture all my life, but unfortunately, we are not in a society, we are not living in a world where education is seen as a payable pursuit. Nobody pays to learn, right? I mean, well, while we're paying for machines to learn, we are not paying human beings to learn about human beings, right? So that's kind of a little bit paradoxical to the little mind that I have. Okay, so yeah, next. So again, back to Khajuraho group. So the idea of the object in space, then this space becomes the object, then next space, and then so basically it switches between solid and void and solid and void and solid and void and solid, and it kind of proliferates. And again, the temple becomes the representative and a very abstract representative of the conceptual Brahman, the cosmic egg, and hence the center point, the central chamber is called the Garbhagriha, womb chamber, and the point where the idol, the Vigraha, is placed is called Hiranyagarbha. And basically, to understand from that Hiranyagarbha through the Vigraha and through the Garbhagriha, the whole temple blossoms out like and the correct, hopefully correct analogy with modern physics would be idea that it is self-similar and it is fractal and it is forever proliferating. So it's basically a solid representation in stone of concepts that are so freakishly abstract, like a cosmic foam. And I'm told by my colleague and good friend Pratyush that cosmic foam is a standard term that is used by astrophysicists to describe the constant formation, expansion, and bursting out. So basically, srishti, sthiti, and then vinash. So it's constantly frothing and frothing and frothing. So we are all Vishnu's dream. And there are these cosmic timescales that are described in the scriptures about, like, in terms of one blink of Brahma to 10 lifetimes of Brahma, and then 1,000 lifetimes of Brahma becomes one blink of Vishnu, and things like that. It's amazing. So the Hindu-Buddhist-Jaina supercluster of world building is massive, hypermassive, absolutely robust, and full of imagination. Like, you can literally, which is exactly what why our gods and goddesses look so inspiring. So because we don't know the shape of the ultimate divine, ultimate divinity, we are free as monkeys on this planet. We are free to imagine as we like our gods to be. So our gods have monkey heads and elephant heads, and they are fat, and they're blue and green and black. They are loving, and they are angry. They are ferocious, and they are protective, and they are problematic as well. Even gods and asuras, devas and asuras, do not escape the consequences of causality, right? Cause and effect. They do not escape it. Gods do get cursed onto earth, or even to hell as well. So again, the idea, very abstract diagrams, which is why they become so difficult to grab. So from triangle to so triangle is the simplest two-dimensional form. Enclosure form, from triangle to square to pentagon, hexagon, up until infinity, till it becomes a polygon of infinite sides, that is a circle. So both from the triangle outside to a circle, expanding, or the triangle from the triangle going dissipating inside to become a circle, and basically to a point, bindu. So the innermost point is also the bindu, the dimensionless geometric concept, that is a point, right? To the highest perceivable geometric figure, that is a sphere for human beings. There are other way more complex geometries up until 11th dimension. What contemporary physics proves to be theoretically possible, the ancient thinkers and Imagineers imagined that millions and millions, not millions, thousands of years ago. Yeah. So then the question again comes back: what style is this temple? So is temple just style? It is the Varahi temple, Kha Akara, and it is basically pyramidal, but it's so proliferated you cannot even determine. One cannot straightforwardly call it a circular or pyramidal or square or cuboid, because of that nature of each of these components expanding to become almost sort of a indeterministic form. So hence the problem, the research gap in representation, in a proper representation that beholds 21st century of Hindu-Buddhist temples. So I was looking for how to classify them, right? So multi-layered convolutional neural network, taxonomy and hierarchy of life, biological forms, these are the so there has to be a hierarchy. So everything cannot be. I cannot be a style of monkey, or a style of Indian, or a style of Bengali, or whatever. It has to be a live domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, genus, and species and subspecies as well. So that gave me that, okay, there has to be a very it could be possible to if there's no lack of resource, and interest and funding. Of course, Hindu-Buddhist temples can be classified into like a chessboard, each one giving it a different proportions, and of course, only some of the instances exist and others don't. This is contemporary scholarship by various senior professors all over the world: Kirti Trivedi, Adam Hardy, Sridhar Rao, P.K. Bhunre, and also Sambit Datta as well. Each one of them opens up, like the more you read, the more you realize you don't know anything. And that's both a liberating realization, but also a scary point. Like, oh my God. Right. Again, we come back to one diagram of Chandela temple. Usually it's mostly the Khajuraho Khandariya Mahadev temple. It shows the procedural incremental growth as expression of a cosmic expansion, right? So each of it's like a kit of parts, and the temple's in size grows bigger and bigger and bigger. And interestingly, so Professor Adam Hardy says that it can't be just a style. So there's a language, then there's a school, then there is a mode, then there is a type, then there is a form, and finally comes the style being like a signature of the specific craftsman, right? The specific shilpin. And the source of this he quotes as Aparajita Pritcha. Aparajita Pritcha, I first I was like, okay, I was confused. I did not pay attention to, but that name itself is so amazing. Aparajita happens to be the youngest of the 5 or 6 sons of Vishwakarma, the builder of the world. So Vishwakarma built the world. He's the god of architects and engineers. So he built the world on instructions of Brahma, who created the universe based on the dream of Vishnu. It is very grossly oversimplified story by a ignorant monkey. So Aparajita is the young boy. He's curious at what all his father has created. So he asks questions. And hence the book is presented as a father-son dialogue, where Aparajita as a young boy keeps on asking, hence Aparajita Pritcha, that what was asked by Aparajita, and Vishwakarma answers why he has done things like that, and thereby through mythology and through this made-up, imaginative way. And I realized why this is important, and it took me 40 years to understand, to come to this realization. It's like when a father explains to his son why he did what he did, it's that kind of a framework of narrative is easier for the pandit of the leader, the sthapati of a school, to teach the youngest apprentice why something is done the way it is done. And then, of course, while practice, the theory is always tested. Theory, at least in Hindu-Buddhist temple, Jaina temple architecture, theory does not precede practice. Practice precedes theory, because you cannot write a theory about a temple that you have not built, right? So theory and practice always went hand in hand. In fact, practice precedes theory significantly. That's my realization so far. Okay. So next is this timeline. One timeline is shown by Professor Adam Hardy, very popular diagram, almost a standard textbook diagram, and the other is by Sambit Datta, who's the Dean of Deakin University in Australia, also comes from the same East Bengal ancestry as myself. But when I see this, and he places India, Java, Cambodia in a timeline. And this is the usual 2-dimensional diagram of describing temples. And while Professor Adam Hardy is showing isometric of temples to give idea of about the form, Professor Datta, because he was working on early temple archetypes, the simpler ones, he has placed only the plan, the figure ground of the horizontal section. But there are some gaps in this as well, because when we see these diagrams at particular points in the x coordinate, being place, and y coordinate being time, we understand that this was built in that particular time, and there's a problematic understanding in human semiotics. The temple was not built at that point in time. The temple took 150 years before that to be built at the time. So the temple representation, the consecration of the temple is not a singular point in time. I mean, maybe it's a singular time, but when does architecture begin? Does architecture begin when the temple is finished? Does architecture begin when the great-grandfather emperor had a dream of Lord Shiva? Or does architecture end, begin when people start worshipping in it? Or with that question then comes, does architecture end if a temple is destroyed by invaders and vandals? No, or by natural calamity as well? Or people leave that town and go somewhere because of famine or drought? So when does architecture begin and when does architecture end? We don't know. It cannot definitely. One thing is sure, it's definitely not a single point. It's at least a linear, if not a Weaverian like situation. So this is one of my professors, Professor Dr. Kailash Rao, who is with his students in School of Planning and Architecture in Vijayawada, is building Latina type Shikhari temples, half or quarter scale prototypes with his conservation students. You can see the image of the actual Udayeshwara temple, but of course there are some inaccuracies, and okay, that's fine. It's the point is to experiment and build it, which is amazing. I mean, I wish I was a student now. And that's Professor Rao there, who was my colloquium reviewer as well. And then later he built all of these components one by one, 3D printed them, and he uses drones to analyze these temples. And then not only what the outer form is, but what is the inner filler, and how does the logic of spatial puzzle, three-dimensional spatial puzzle begin to develop. Really amazing. Another is contemporary work is by this very young scholar from Remote Sensing Institute, and now he's a PhD student in IIT Bombay, who did a paper on semantic segmentation of architecture of Hindu temple architecture in Himachal Pradesh. But as an architect, I see a couple of again gaps. That Garbhagriha is a void, Amlaka is a solid, Shikhara is a solid, but then again comes walls. So then in Hindu-Buddhist architecture, what is a wall? What is a window? So these are very problematic, not problematic, like these do not fit with the Renaissance, post-Renaissance, modernist, and of course contemporary understanding, the Western understanding of space making, right? Because, I mean, I'll go back to the previous slide. Tell me which part is a wall. Everything is a wall. Where is the window? Where is the door? So door, window, wall, this, again, semantic understanding of architecture in the Western schools, I mean, Bauhaus or the modernist school, pre-modernist schools as well, they do not pairs, and these traditions do not fit. So a lot of contemporary digital scholarship ends up trying to reduce and force fit Hindu-Buddhist-Jaina architecture in the framework of Western temple architecture. And this is a critique that I have received whenever I was allowed a chance to present my work, because the reviewers immediately say, oh, you should compare it to a Gothic cathedral. I'm like, no, the point is not to compare. The point is Gothic cathedrals are amazingly beautiful. They are built procedurally. They have all the properties of space making. But a Gothic cathedral and the mausoleum of Rumi in Isfahan and Khajuraho temple cannot be put into the modernist framework of looking at things, because they look at divinity, the idea of divine concepts, abstract concepts, into mortal, normal people values and space and craftsmanship. Sure. But the procedures and their semantics and terminology are completely different. Somebody may want to do a comparative analysis. That will be another ocean of study in itself. But there is absolutely no need. In fact, we should not do it. And that's the decolonization aspect of it. So whenever they say, oh, we should compare it to a Gothic cathedral in Cologne, I'm like, that's exactly what I'm not here to do. Thank you. We have done that for 300 years. For 300 years, we were told, no, your architecture is savage. Look at Her Majesty's architecture. We have enough Her Majesty's architecture. Thank you. Why not build a Hoysala architecture in the middle of Paris? The idea is not to take a slice of their pie. The idea is not to take or enforce anybody's architecture or anybody's cultural values on anyone else. That is what the colonization does. The very idea that mine is better than yours is the problematic understanding. It's like saying, I like Van Gogh, but not Rembrandt. To not like and dislike, to have to choose objectively to say what is best and what is better is totally fails the purpose of appreciating art or any form of creative expression, you know. And I think that's also a primary sort of a deeper undercurrent of what I'm trying to do here. I'll proceed. So yeah, and basically this is the timeline. I just took a couple of temples in Bhubaneswar, which is Lingaraja and Rajarani, let's say, and the red, of course, the graph itself will increase if I add other regions of the world, as in other South Asian nations. And the red line that you see below, each one is basically the average lifetime of a person that was 25 to 30 years. And the blue part is how long it took. When did it begin and when did it finish? Imagine how many generations of people have been building it, which basically means it cannot be done on a palm manuscript. Nope. It has to, the design instructions have to be embedded and coded in Sanskrit poetry that is that expresses its proportions and design instructions, but also leaves enough playroom for the people to come, the craftsmen to come, the next generations to play and, you know, bend and mend and break rules. So it's a very active form of spatial play. And then I realized that, okay, while I'm realizing these, that, okay, it is actually a multi-generational puzzle, right? No one generation solved it. So it challenges the Western concepts of architectural authorship. So, you know, Zaha Hadid built this building, I built this building, you know, the architect believing that they are the center of the universe. They are not. Nobody knows here who's the architect. Only few temples have their on their bodies inscribed that which king sponsored was the patron of the temple, but the authorship is absolutely non-individualistic, collective and multi-generational. So the name of the architect does not even matter, which is exactly in contrast to how we have come to understand architecture or even modern contemporary 20th century art. It becomes an individual creation, and, you know, the ego develops before the work, and this is exactly anti-ego. But of course, there is also the political intent of the king to show, oh, I have sponsored building the biggest temple. Anyway, so there's no right and wrong. These are the conclusions and observations I have made so far, and I hope to make better observations in future, and I'm happy to receive any critique as well. So then, so what are the words, you know, like what are the terms in order to build up a knowledge management and representation system? So basically the ontology, you know, from data, information, knowledge to wisdom, recollection, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, synthesizing. So then becomes, you know, which kind of in the understanding of Hindu-Buddhist-Jaina architectural space making, there are concepts. On that concepts, that what do you want to do? Okay, then there are action. Okay, these are the things you can do to make that. Okay, you want to express God dancing or God, you know, being Nataraj. Okay, so then you do some actions, and then there are lists of actions. This is the way you break the stone. And then there are processes which becomes glossaries. That these are the terms. This is the hand, this is the mudra, this is the face, this is the expression, this is the rupa and the pratirupa and the alankara and shringara. Okay. Then this further glossaries becomes dictionaries. So it's like, these are the things you do for a temple, these are the things you do for the cornerstone, these are the things you do for the central stones, and these are the things you do elsewhere. Out of dictionaries become controlled vocabulary. So now we are in the digital realm, controlled vocabulary. So you build a vocabulary because these temples were built using Sanskrit, in interpretation of Sanskrit verses, thereby language directly and indirectly translates to architectural decisions. So hence language becomes very important, and thereby a craft school of, let's say, the Sompura generational school, Vishwakarmas of Andhra Pradesh, and the Sompuras of Gujarat, and the Mahapatras of Odisha. These are not surnames, but I'm talking about trades. And of course, so their controlled vocabularies are completely different. There is similarity, but there is vast, when you zoom into the scale at a granular level, there is vast difference. So when you collect these vocabularies, then it becomes a taxonomy. Okay, in this temple, in this region, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it becomes a series of taxonomies, taxonomy 1, taxonomy 2, taxonomy 3. And then when you further collect them, it becomes a thesaurus. So becomes so basically the thesaurus of let's say Hindu-Buddhist-Jaina architecture in South Asia. Right, so it will be multiple thesauri, right? So one, the practice of making this in Afghanistan and Pakistan and in Kashmir would be different. Right below from the Central India, the upper Central India, then very different from Central India, then Vesara, and then Dravida, and Maru Gurjar, Upper Amara, and then Kalinga and Vanga as well. And not to mention the inter-exchanges, right? So one can even imagine that how if we start developing an ontological knowledge graph and to build a RDF research development framework, the interconnectedness between any two concepts is, any n number of concepts is so extreme, so high, it is impossible for a human being to do so, to have an exhaustive interconnected network, and thereby you need digital tools to understand how human beings made meaning by making space. So so region, language, school, mode, types. Because of the time shortage, I will just go just quickly peruse through multidimensional ontology. So whenever we look at, I mean, now that you are looking at a screen and I'm looking at the screen as well, it's two-dimensional. But the ontology, I believe, cannot be two-dimensional. It has to be three-dimensional, which basically is digital, right? It cannot be like one thing leading on to other. So taxonomy and classification is linear. So this is bilinear, basically two axis, right? And then comes the time axis. The time axis, of course, is the prime axis. So when you start doing that, you will realize that the dimensionality of such a knowledge framework would become crazily even beyond 3 dimensions. So it will become a 4-dimensional model or something like that. So for example, in my case study, Rajarani and Lingaraja, so there is a mode is Rekhadeul mode, and then type is Manjushri in elevation and Mahakailasha elevation. So these are types and modes and languages. So these are not the style. And this is something that is extremely disappointing for me, because whenever I read Indian scholars or non-architecture scholars, they all call it, and of course, the gross mispronunciation, imitating the non-Indian Western folk, yoga, Vastupurusha Mandala, right, Nagara, Vesara. It's deeply disrespectful, and yeah, I realize that I'm getting grumpily old. Yeah. So every generation of temple has some predeterminants and components and attributes, things that came before the temple, things that happened after the temple. So this is the framework, and then I expand on the blue zone and on the green zone, and yeah. So the blue zone expands into the cultural, technical, aesthetic, and independent concepts, entities, various entities that feed onto the case study temple. And again, this is very simple. I have another one that is the updated version is way more complex, and like it kind of breaks my brain as well to look at it beyond 10 minutes. Next, yeah. So these are the components of the temple, how that is built across schools. So immediately, I mean, it's very easily, it kind of exponentially grows. The information, if you feed it, it grows exponentially. Hence, someone like us needs the help of an AI-based framework. But then again, it is absolutely impossible for AI to have any semblance of human cognition or even human semantic knowledge. AI does not know any of these. It just is a, I mean, of course, it has achieved a lot, of course, but it has created more problems than solve. So these are the basic, very fundamental, very simple rules of on which the temple is conceived, conceptually, inception. So basically, the Vastu Purusha Mandala and how each and there's a very interesting story that the Vastu Purusha, the demon, he had to be subdued, and all the gods sat on him and subdued him under the earth, and thereby the weights of each of the demigods and the gods on all directions. In the center is Brahmasthana, right, Brahmapada. So, and of course, it's not just by 8 by 8, it could be 9 by 9 or even 6 by 6, 5 by 5. And also one of the work from my supervisor, which he says that the temple is of course an abstract representation of the body of the meta-human, that is the God, and it also is representative of the at least three known realms that we know: the underworld, mortal world, and heavenly world. Arupa Dhatu, Rupa Dhatu, and then even in Buddhist terms, Patala Loka, Bhuloka, Suvarloka, right? So, and that is very syncretic with the Hindu philosophical as well. So the interesting thing is that the Vajradhatu Mandala and all these mandalas are a way of representing the multidimensional cosmos onto a two-dimensional plane. So it's a sort of projection. So you project and you are like, oh, okay, here sits that, here sits that, here is this God, here is that God, here is day, here is night. Now we'll come down to much more. Again, I'm zooming in to Kalinga school drawings of conjectural drawings of Lingaraja temple, but nobody measured the z-axis up until now. And of course, I have been at loggerheads with the authorities to get access to these drawings. I'm almost like, on the verge of giving up. And in this book by Alice Bonner and Sadashiv Rath Sharma, which is a translation of Shilpa Prakasha by Ramachandra Mahapatra Paula Bhattaraka, a very one of the most prolific sthapatis whose work was translated in palm manuscripts. So the left ones are his palm manuscripts, and the right one is the actual photograph. Of course, it's not similar because the proportional differences are allowed, right? But the semantic built up is similar, and hence there is a type in terms of plan, which is the horizontal section. There is a type in terms of elevation, that okay, this plan combined with this type of elevation, thereby you get the 3D, right? So XY and ZX, or ZX and ZY, which is because it's super symmetric. So both the ZX and ZY planes are same largely, and so these are so procedural, so algorithmic, so essentially computational. They should be, machines should be used to analyze what human beings have not only imagined but built by hand. Continued for other less popular temples, but equally important. Again, some information is available, some information is not available. So I kept so there are these gaps. So this is the Lingaraja temple, and of course this is a rare photograph because nowadays you will not be able to allowed to take anything inside other than the flowers and the offerings. And again, I showed this to show how big it is, right, in scale. So that's the red portion that we see in the two corners, and the typical human height is just this much. only till the half of the Adhisthana. That's how big it is, right? Yeah, and that's the kalash that is there on the top. And these are the pandas climbing up during Mahashivratri to do Mahadipam, where they changed the fire and also clean Shiva's dhanush. Not many, so everybody knows Shiva as holding the Trishula, but no one knows, hardly anyone knows that Shiva is also known to have conjured up his bow, Pinak, at will, and hence he's also known as Pinakini. And it's in mythology, it's the same bow that Lord Ram had to string it up, and he broke it down. Yeah. So this is the plan. You can see the quality of the photograph. This is the plan of, this is the horizontal plan, but temples do not have the same plan like our boring contemporary architecture. So one plan is not enough. You have to read the plan you have to read the slices at various levels, z-axis levels of XY planes. But the plans were measured in 1930, 1915 when they were surveying, but the elevation was built conjecturally because, of course, nobody would be allowed to climb. This is again by whose is this? Karunasagar Behera and Alice Bonner. Yeah, after Kilpasarini is the analysis of that two components of that plan. I'm so sorry. Yeah, this is the Rekha Deula and the Jagamohana, the audience hall, and how it sits on various proportions. And where these sections, three other empty places are, this is where the smaller temples are, which is this temple, right? And Konark was, you see these three sort of apsidal temples, basically Ganesh, Kartikeya, and Madurga, of course. So they would sit there. And Konark, for example, which is a Surya temple, this was supposed to be a larger next generation iteration of Lingaraja, much more grander, much more massive in scale, right? Of course, that brings on different structural issues as well, concerns as well. And I think that's one of the contributions of why the Konark temple got destroyed. The Rekha Deula, the main shikhara of Konark. Again, Lingaraja temple, you can see the difference in the curves because none of these temple elevations were measured. So the curvilinear profile, the silhouette, are distinctly different because each of these scholars, of course, this is important because even a mistake or a wrong or a incomplete representation of a multi-generational architecture like this is important in order to understand what not to do. So an incomplete puzzle is equally important in order to understand how the puzzle is to be completed. A very good example is Sagrada Familia in Barcelona by Antonio Gaudí Pernet, one of, God's favorite architect, as he's called, and Barcelona still remains to be my architectural pilgrimage. Again, conjectural section. I think this is from ASI, but yeah, this is ASI. The bad drafting says it. Yeah, extremely poor workmanship. This is what I've been doing. So I've been trying to build, this looks very crude. It is trying to make the subdivisional model into in using Rhino and Grasshopper, where I'm using again components and build up, but it's not only from part to whole, but it is also from whole to part. Because when you determine the whole, okay, let the height be 100 meters. So all of your wrong calculations and wrong heights will be contained within 100 meters. So finally, it will be accurate. So it's a very common approach for in survey and leveling for measuring large, really large parcels of land. Right, when the great trigonometric survey of India began under the British rule beginning from Karachi, which is where the standard mean sea level is there, and then comes from there is drawn the means MSL in Bombay, which is the first step of Asiatic Society town hall. So that's how you draw references across large distances, right? And hence they are called isobars. This is the second temple. Now a more accurate component study of Rajarani temple. I'll again skip, as in drive-through. Again, drawing by Professor Adam Hardy, the edicular expansion of Rajarani. So there's a small temple, then the temple grows big, and then other small temples appear. Then it goes further big, and the third generation of temples, spires, begin. And you will see that in the model. These are the drawings from the diagrams from Bettina Boimer and Alice Bonner's book, from whom I met. She is amazingly knowledgeable, so wise, and speaks Shuddha Sanskrit and Shuddha Hindi. It's very soft-spoken, and a Padma Shri laureate as well, Indian citizen from Austria. She dedicated 50 years of her life in studying temples, but she was never allowed in a living Hindu temple because she is, first of all, female, and second of all, white and Christian. They would not accept the fact that she told me this, that she had left Christianity way long back and has accepted Kashmiri Shaivism, and she has been studying and disseminating Kashmiri Shaiva Siddhanta knowledge. I met her in Delhi and spoke to her, and she was so, delightfully like a grandma, surprised that how did I ever come to know about her. So that was an amazing conversation I had. So this is how I'm analyzing the various plans of the Rajarani temple, the elevations, not only in terms of the two-dimensional diagram, but also the three-dimensional 3D scanning data, which is being gatekept by ASI. That's what they do. But anyway, I recently, 3 weeks ago, had a major breakthrough where I used generative AI using publicly available images to act as photogrammetric data to build a 70 to 80% accurate scanning model. This is again photogrammetric work from one of my friends from Odisha, but he's based in Berlin. He went on his own and scanned all of them without any appreciation or acknowledgement. That's what Indian society does to its researchers, of course. Another artist I'm really impressed, and I'm in conversation with him, is a 65-year-old Stepan Samuchuk, who keeps on building cellular automata. The moment he saw my posts on Hindu temples, he asked if they had a rule. And he says, I immediately see the rules of cellular automata proliferating on a 2D plane. And these are of course, very low res. What he builds is massive, like each image is 2 gigabytes in size, massive, and you can zoom on these endlessly. So each of these squares would become this square. It's self-similar fractals. You have to determine at what level it stops and at what level it begins. So yeah, very interesting and very, colorful, and the analogy and the similarity of the fundamental rules is very evident. And this is something he reached out to me, and I was so happy to see his work. And these are some of the other side works that I've been doing, not side works, they are important, to look at what 21st century South Asian architecture could be that are not temples. I'm not talking about building more Hindu temples, but rather temples of typologies, architecture of typologies that we need today that do not mimic something built in London or Dubai. Kolkata wants to be Mumbai, Mumbai wants to be Dubai, Dubai wants to be God knows what. Yeah, so whenever we talk, even between architects, and I talk to my Indian architect friends, that what is in Indian architecture? So my usual go-to joke is Mandir, Masjid, Maqbara, Kila, Kund, Gaon. So, but I want to, I would like to have this as my life's work, to build things that we haven't seen before. And a quote of my practice is imagining the absurd way before it's standard. So that's pretty much the end of it. So I will, so these are anyway, this is the logo that I made for Jindal School of Art and Architecture on the left. They never paid me a penny. These are imagining other building forms and sections. You can see the similarities of to the Hindu-Buddhist temple architecture, but these are not temples. These are deep, heavy, big buildings with offices and and living spaces and all of that. This is what I usually do. Yeah, so again, Vajradhatu Mandala. And then recently I tried with 3D AI. I asked them to make it a 3-dimensional, but what it did is make a 3D looking thing of 2D. It could not imagine an isometric view. And that's where it's, but it's still a beautiful artwork, but also very commercial, kitschy. But that's okay. I like kitschy. Yeah, so these are the Rajarani temple plans. Yep, I have already been through them. Give me a moment, please. And yeah, so again, one of my sketches, I'm still trying to like a massive Shiva temple built in the Mount Kailash, but it will not be big, but it's okay to imagine. I think Hindu-Buddhist. This is a Shiva temple in Pakistan now being used as a home, and somebody posted it, and the accompanied music was the tragedy of ignorance. How apt, but yeah, c'est la vie. Yeah, so these are the Ashapuri Museum models that were unbuilt, unassembled. So they were always experimenting, proving the point. The drawing of Prambanan temple, original drawing, and then the Prambanan temple complex itself, Shiva, Brahma, Vishnu, Parvati, and all other smaller temples. Amazing site. I mean, it's so spiritual. I mean, it's as spiritually uplifting as, let's say, visiting to Borobudur or Angkor as well. This is a rather small temple in Kakanmat in Madhya Pradesh. I think it is not destroyed by invaders, but rather broke down due to an earthquake. But even an incomplete or unfinished puzzle temple like this gives us a lot of hint into the construction logic of it. You can it's basically with apologies to my doctor friends, medical friends, it's basically you have to dissect a human cadaver in order to understand how the human body works, right? So you have to study incomplete, dilapidated, or destroyed temples in order to understand how the other temples were built. It basically an incomplete puzzle. It's still a good hint to complete that puzzle. That's it. And this is a corner of Hoysala temple. Amazingly, I mean, profusely carved. I am yet to, other than Dilwara, which is in marble, and then Dilwara temples, temple number 5, which is the main Dilwara temple, Jain temple, and then this Chennakesava temple in Halebedu, built under the Hoysala patronage. I am yet to see such flamboyant. I mean, of course there are. I know. I mean, Cologne Cathedral, for example, or even Winchester Abbey. Sure, it exists. It's not to say that it does not exist. Or even profusely illustrated and carved columns of Temple of Karnak, not Konark, Karnak, where I was. I mean, like amazing things human beings have done 10,000 years ago. It's like, it's easy to feel. I see some questions. I will come to those. Sorry, I'll wrap it up. So these are the sections, models of generating 3D images, 3D models of the Lingaraja temple. This is the Lingaraja temple. Then I'm slicing, and of course this is only 70% accurate, not 100%, because the machine generating 3D from 2D public images, which are not even complete, cannot definitely understand the nuance of a human. Sorry, that's my clumsiness. I wanted to show yeah, it's so heavy. This has like 500,000 triangles. So that's the density at which we are operating. So that's Lingaraja temple. This is much easier, much more dense information, accurate, which is the Rajarani temple. It's showing its inside Garbhagriha as well, and the Jagamohan as well. I have been inside it 3-4 times as well. Like every time I go, I discover something new. but also I'm interested in the semantic build-up of this shikharas. That itself would have gone into a 2-hour lecture. And then this is the famous Khajuraho temple. But the machine did a mistake by this spire, these 3 spires, and the fourth one. This thing should have been attached to the central spire. So it misinterpreted the images that I paid from the public Google images and my own photographs. But even then, it maintained the logic of fractalism and self-similarity and three-dimensional proliferation. So, though it is not a Khandariya Mahadev temple 3D model, but it follows the rules, and it could have been another temple in the Chandela style, Chandela patronage school, right? So even though it's wrong, but it's right, and it captured the hollow spaces really nicely. But I don't think it captured this part accurately, because this is supposed to be hollow. I have a section. Again, after a lot of fights, I got these sections. Yeah, this is Khandariya Mahadev temple. So, yeah, and hence it's called Khandariya, because the Pradakshina path usually, which is Pradakshina, which is open, it's enclosed. So there's a double layer temple inside a temple as well. So this, of course, I did not feed this because I'll have to clean it. Of course, I will never get this proper drafted drawings from ASI. I have given up all hope. So I will have to make this myself or a research assistant. Unfortunately, our friend Ankit was supposed to join me on this project. I told him after thesis to take a couple of weeks off, completely do no architecture, and his unfortunate, untimely demise. That's sad beyond measure. So this is what I've been doing till now, and I would like to open the house to questions. That's all right. Okay. Done. Sorry for the long time.
Kingshuk, we have some two very important questions from Subro and Arab.
Please. Where can I see that? Can I stop sharing the screen?
Yeah.
Okay. Please. Okay. Wow. The questions are.
Before
what are the modern equivalent?
Let's thank the speaker for this really entertaining, enlightening, and unhinged talk. What I really liked about is your message about no comparison. There can be no comparison between different styles of architecture, and that's a wrong path to follow. Like every other thing, we should not really, it's very context sensitive, whether we compare things and whether we don't, and what is the intention behind comparing. If we are in this unhinged philosophical discussion, my only point is collaboration instead of competition can sometimes make things much better than going the path of Donald Trump, is what I would say right now. That's it.
No, competition is the nature of the animal. Collaboration is the nature of the civilization.
Yes, no, completely agreed. And I think we also distort the meaning of survival of the fittest. It does not, like, the meaning is also very context dependent. For example, I think there was a historian who was asked, what is the first sign of a civilization? And she had a very good answer. The first sign of civilization is not building, it is a healed femur bone.
Femur bone, yes.
Somebody stayed with the injured.
Somebody picked them up, took them to the cave, stayed till 6 weeks, 7 weeks, till the bone healed, got them food. Because in the natural world, if your femur bone breaks, you are food.
If you have a bone broken of your leg, you are food, indeed.
You're food, yeah. So somebody had to suspend their life.
Yes. So survival of the fittest, in that we cannot think of it at individual level, but rather a collaboration that also is some kind of a survival instinct. And fit, the meaning of fit also has to be interpreted in this condition. especially if we think of this whole planet connected. There is a very nice saying in Russian. It says, if the bear is dancing in your neighbor's garden, my friend, don't be happy. Be sure the bear is going to come and dance in your garden also. Very much. And
Yes.
if we start thinking of the whole planet connected and not in terms of Americas, India's, Middle East, we will come and we do see this happening at the moment. If Africa is in problem, Europe cannot stop immigration. It's not going to happen. No, it would be a wishful thinking, because when you have nothing left to fight for, you are in a way very, very powerful. You're not afraid of death. So we do have to really think of this whole world as a connected system where actions in one place have repercussions in the other place, definitely, whether we like it or not. And with that, I think floor is back to Kingshuk and the questions from the audience. The first question is from Ritesh Chaturvedi. As a part of your study, why did you decide to go by architecture based on philosophy, example Jainism, Buddhism, instead of architectural style, example Nagara, Dravidian, and Vesara? Or you have covered the entire angle in your study and are simply presenting only one aspect here for focus? The question is, are we connecting architecture to religion or to architectural styles, is what I think the question is.
No, the thing is actually because where does science begin and where does science end, or where does how far can we go deep inside atoms? So, and how far can we go to the universe, observable universe? So we begin at some point, and then we realize, oh, there are things that have preceded, and there are things that have succeeded. Then things that came before, things that came after, things that are more fundamental, things that are more apparent on the surface. And I think it does not matter where you take things from. What it matters is where you take them to. So I did not start with the philosophy. I started with, okay, I have been to Lingaraj temple as a child, and temples in Deoghar and Bengal and Northeast. That's where it started. So then I realized, oh, okay, the rabbit hole goes deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. So I'm like, okay, how far can I go? And this is a problem that I face at all my colloquium and conference presentations, that do I begin telling Europe how did it all begin, or do I assume they already know and I jump to my little case study temple? So that conundrum always happens. I have never been able to draw a line. Fortunately, for my doctoral final defense, hopefully next year, if I get to finish the writing, they will give me an hour and a half to explain all of it. Finally, I'll give my live TED talk. That would be nice. The first question is actually by Shubhru. I'm sorry for delaying on that. No, there are no modern equivalent of sophisticated temple building. None. And I'm not trying to praise Hindu-Buddhist-Jaina architecture because I'm from that region, but there are also no modern equivalent of, let's say, Sagrada Familia, or let's say Cologne Cathedral, or Egyptian temples. I'm not talking about pyramids, I'm talking about temples. Temple of Karnak, Temple of Luxor, Temple of Hatshepsut and the Valley of Kings, or Chinese temples, contemporary equivalent in terms of, as you mentioned, beauty, complexity, aesthetics, which is basically the Vitruvian principle, utilitas, formitas, venustas, right? Again, there's a German term as well, Gesamtkunst, for total work of art. So even in a Hindu temple, where does structure end, and then architecture begins, and then architecture ends and sculpture begins, right? So it's all done in one piece of stone. It has structural integrity, it has architectural logic, procedural mathematical logic, and it has the beauty of iconography on that other outer surface, right? So we only study what we can with our abilities. And what was that shlok? Very nice shlok. Satyameva ekam vipra bahuda pradanti. There's only one truth, wise men say, express it differently. Jotomot totopot. And to quote Pratyush back, since Jotomot is totopot, then reality is depending on the observer. So
Ekam
the
satya
reality of
bahura
Hindu-Buddhist.
vipravadanti.
Ekam satya
Ekam satya bahura vipravadanti.
Yes, correct. Thanks, man. To quote Pratyush as well, reality depends on observers. So the reality of Hindu-Buddhist architecture,
Kingshuk, I
for
will not
me, depends on.
attribute but that quote is not to me. That's too heavy a quote to be attributed to
I
me.
know. I'm using that quote to exit, basically. कि मुझे जैसा दिखता है वही सत्य है.
But KD, why do you think that's the case? Because I mean, civilizationally, we have developed, we have been progressive. Is it because that we don't have that amount of time? Like for example, it took almost 150 years to from the inception to completing something. We don't have such amount of time right now. Or and has it happened
We don't.
same with the other areas of art and culture like music? For example, if you compare Bach with or even some of those Indian classical Hindustani or Carnatic with today's music, is there some kind of analogy which you can think of?
Of course, absolutely. I'll give you another analogy: weaving, fabric. All forms of weaving are analog computing. In fact, the earliest modern computers were also hand looms, right? Hand or machine looms, power looms, punch cards. Then came Babbage, the differential engine, and all of that. So to weave is to basically embed information in a two-dimensional format. And as you weave, you are passing time. So you are passing through time, and you are embedding information in it. And as you read, as a viewer and then as an observer, when you read the embroidery on a sari, you get a story, a narrative, and things like that. So there are analogies everywhere. Why colonialism, war? Most ancient civilizations, all ancient civilizations, were not anthropocentric. They were ecocentric. Human beings are not the center of the universe or the worldview. We are one part of nature, and as intelligent beings, we must understand, study, observe, and find out interesting things about nature, right? But today it's like, and the in my little understanding, the post-industrial, as in the so-called Enlightenment that was funded by colonial that Western framework of science became a massive project of human domination of nature. Right. It's basically, I mean, it's easy for me to say. It makes me a hypocrite as well. I am a product. I am a child of post-colonialism, and I'm a consumer. I have fancy phones, and fancy computers as well. So that philosophical hypocrisy remains, and I acknowledge it. Hence, it's like, look at, I'll share, for example, I'll share 4 photographs, let's say, one from Delhi, one from Gurgaon, Bombay, Hyderabad, Bangalore. You will not be able to distinguish which one is what, unless you have specifically been in that viewing point, in that panoramic angle, vantage point. Because of, in the name of globalization, and post-independence India was left, or any other ex-colony was left, so deeply impoverished, not only financial, but also spiritual. This is something Swami Vivekananda talks about it, the spiritual awakening, because our thought processes are broken. So what does an impoverished nation can do in order to catch up? Build buildings that look like buildings in London and New York and San Francisco. Oh, we have glass buildings, we have fancy buildings in Powai and in Bangalore, but those buildings actually work like microwaves, absolutely like microwaves, and that's a problem. So this is not, can those people not build buildings that are Indic or even regional, very nuanced, with contextually responsive, climatically responsive, and delighting to the human spirit? Modern contemporary urban environments are so dismal, they do not inspire us. You and I, people like us, do not remember any part of our daily commute from our home to our workplaces. It's because our environments are so depressing. No matter what our paychecks are, we are living through the drudgery of adulting, and none of it. Which is why old ruinous Italian villages and old villages in Kerala or Bengal or Madhya Pradesh, they draw the nostalgia because it talks to the human spirit. The cities are not designed for humans. The cities are designed for automobiles. And what do automobiles do? They stay parked under the sun for most of their life. I would rather love to build 100 schools in 100 villages across 100 countries in the world than build one massive shopping mall in Bangalore or wherever. That's not the kind of architect I want to be. Simple.
Hey, KD, thanks a lot, man.
Thanks, man. Super. Okay. Done. What do you think reveals about underlying civilization? Indic subcontinent, our civilizational worldview, that's a very big question. I mean, what do I know, right? But they knew that other people existed and other rules and other philosophies existed. So the worldview, when we say Indian subcontinent worldview, that worldview did not start in India. That worldview did not necessarily start in today's India, or that worldview also came and built and took in other philosophies, and it's a compilation, right? So it is, as the last shloka of the 7th shloka of Shiv Mahimna Stotram says, Ruchinan Bachitran Driju Kutila Nana Patajusha Nrinameko Gamyastamasi Payasam Arnavaiva. All the waters, ultimately crooked or straight, ultimately go to the sea in order to become clouds. So part of it, and Indic philosophers, or Central Asian philosophers, pre-Hindu Vedic Mesopotamian philosophers, they were aware that we are only small cogs in the large machinery. I think we have lost that deliberately due to what contemporary lifestyle is. We think more about what kind of phone I need in the next 3 months, what kind of new smartwatch I need this Diwali, or should I buy a new car? It does not think about how does buying car affect the environment. So we have lost that kind of a worldview, and that needs major, what can I say, overhaul of thought. But I mean, is ours the best? I don't know.
I have one other question. I'll just type in the window.
Please. You are typing. Okay.
I have done it.
That's very difficult. Okay, that's very difficult. I would not build. I am actually designing for a competition for Indian Institute of Architects headquarter, which basically an Indian Institute of Architects. So Institute of Architects should teach about architecture of the subcontinent, right? But then the point is not to make a Hindu temple out of Indian Institute of Architects, right? So what would be that? That's the work that I'm doing. If you want,
Akanksha has joined also. Listen to this question answer. Akanksha has joined as well to listen to this answer.
Oh, thank you. Give me one moment. I want to show. This is away from my PhD, of course. Thank you for Akanksha for joining as well. Give me a moment. Let me go. I'll show you. This is what I've been crazily doing since a couple of days. No, not this one. Yeah. So that's the sketch, and that's the year. So yeah, I have been proliferating models like these from my sketches, and give me some time. Oh, I don't know if I'm still sharing the screen. Sorry. Screen 2, share. Sorry. Yeah. Can you see this? I hope I'm visible now. Yeah. So for the Indian Institute of Architects building, I mean, this is not going to be the final design, but I thought it would be interesting to look at very formal. And this is a very interesting misinterpretation of the Buddhist Chaitya halls in Badami and Bhaja and Karli caves. It's uploading, and it looks like a rib cage. Yeah, but it's actually this is a distortion of
I
the
thought
photograph.
So. It looked like
it looks like a So it does not understand. The machine does not understand the semantics of the sculptures, right? Also, the logic of this Buddhist column capitals are wrong, and it's supposed to be not vertical hall, but rather horizontal, because the photograph was, yeah, give me a moment. Where is that? Chaita Halls. I get confused where I am. Images, inspiration. Yeah, so I'm looking at inspiration from, so I'm not going to make a well, but this is a great spatial tool. These are the columns of Hoysala Halebidu temple. It's amazing to do this without, as in speedy contemporary tools, but they had contemporary tools. It's not that aliens came and built it. Yeah, that's just randomized bullshit. So yeah, to look at the idea of a jharoka and this kind of a jharoka, but then interpret it in this kind of a facade where each one is a house, and then it becomes a jharoka and like a pigeon house and all of that. So this is how I'm thinking. So this was the photograph basically, right? So which the photographer made a panoramic stitch laying down, and this is supposed to be the ceiling. And actually this is inspired from timber construction of boats and ships. This is why we know that Hindu-Buddhist temples existed even before stone. They at least 1,500 years of years. So basically the machine misinterpreted this and took it as a horizontal atrium, and this is what the machine built. So I was like, woohoo, interesting. And now suddenly it starts looking like a courtyard, inner courtyard. And yeah, some other interesting stuff that I was doing. I've been building it like stupidly crazy. It takes a while, yeah, to build that texture. So at different scales, it does interpret the sculptural work as well. So that combines both into my PhD, but also, I mean, each mistake is a learning. Why did that mistake happen? And this is referring to you. This is very important, very critical for studying, detecting early cancer using AI to do pattern recognition and developing vision models, computer vision models. So these are all sculptures, but we know that this is the wrong thing because the computer does not understand a human figure and a flower or a tree, but it understands form, architectural form, not the iconography, but architectural form. Like recently, there are now available 3D open source diagrams that explain human body in very amazingly accurate, in terms of systemic understanding, cardiovascular, this, that. And of course, I do visit them when I have some time to kill to understand how is knowledge being represented, right? Because human knowledge about human bodies is essentially very critical, right? You cannot do mistakes. Yeah. So these are the things I've been building on the side to determine how far can I polish and fine tune the LLM's understanding of Hindu-Buddhist spaces, because most of the data sets of architecture are Ambrocentric, Eurocentric, and Anglocentric. That's okay, but there is no enough data sets, enough pictures are not fed into this that the machines will understand. Oh, this is a Rahapaga, step number 5. It does not understand the semantics yet. I would like to build this semantic, but that requires immense amount of basically dirty groundwork, which is basically labeling, collecting, cleaning, and labeling and annotating data. Nobody wants to do that. Nobody's interested to fund that. So that's the truth, right? So between the frying pan and the fire. I don't know. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for your detailed answer. Thanks. It was very intriguing.
Thanks, man. Okay. Last question. Somebody typed something. Sorry. Aha. Super. Absolutely. Thanks, Shubro. Okay, my friend in IIT Bombay. Yeah. Okay. I'll totally ask him. Please share if you have any further info. I'd be much delighted. And also, what happens is like a lot of this data, of course, are done by computer engineers and AI engineers.
Kingshuk, what is the software that you have used to draw this? This is a 3D rendering or a 2D surface?
It's a 3D model generated out of. It's a wrong model, first of all. I'll tell you why that mistake happened.
So no, let me ask you a pointed question. So when you are trying to digitally archive a building, are you laser scanning with point clouds and then storing it in the computer? What's going on?
That is, yes. So that is not my expertise. That is necessary. And let's say Lingaraj temple and Rajarani temple 3D lidar scanning, that goes into conservationist.
That's cool. So somebody approached me recently, not in the context of temples, but there is something called structural health monitoring, where people look at bridges and modern buildings, and not only structural health monitoring. What I realized, these guys told me, let's say if you are submitting a building plan to, let's say in India, it's not a big problem. No. Let me complete. So in India, if you change a switchboard from one place to another place 10 meters away, it's not a problem so much. But in Europe and America, if you want to redo a planning, this actually costs quite a lot. And if you have made a mistake in your architecture, it will be a recurring cost. So what people are interested now is in making a digital twin before actually going to the real building, which is something that has been done in defense systems, all the we are simulating before making the architecture. So is this really true that people are shifting more towards making a digital twin before going into the real direction of architecture?
Making a digital twin and running, for example, when I'm building designs for my clients or as consultant, I am making it part of a digital twin, right? The electrician gives me a diagram, and the interior designer gives me another set of diagram. The structural engineer gives me another diagram. So the role of an architect becomes like a music orchestra conductor. I'm not the expert violinist. I'm not the expert cello player. I'm not the expert pianist, but I work with other experts to ultimately make architecture or ultimately make music. And the digital twin aspect is very necessary, structural health monitoring, which is why ASI Dassault Foundation funded the LIDAR structural scanning, because Lingaraj and Rajarani, Parashurameshwar and Mukteshwar, at least these 4 temples, I know personally that I have seen major, huge cracks inside the stone, inside the Garbhagriha, because of the settling of foundations, not anyone's fault, right? Because Odisha's soil is highly, it has a high amount of rocks, but the rocks settle. So Odisha is not blessed with great agriculture and also annual weather calamities. But the way these temples have stood the test of time is amazing, which is why they wanted to do the point cloud scanning through the stone to see how the cracks have appeared that can completely devastate the temple, maybe in 100 years, but that is going to happen, as with things, right? To have that kind of an understanding but the problem is those who yield that power and those who can sponsor and have the technology are so deeply insecure of the knowledge that they have, and they gatekeep these things and they do not disseminate it as citizen science, which is why so less of us know about our own heritage and culture. We know more about pyramids. Hello.
Thank you.
Thank you, man.
Any more questions? Prashant, do you have something to say?
Easy question, please.
No, I don't have a question, but thanks, Kingshuk. Of course, we touched upon the entire spectrum from art, philosophy, religion, and science, and learned how architecture is a beautiful amalgamation of all of this. So this was very insightful, and thanks to the entire audience asking amazing questions, staying with us for almost 2 hours. And we look forward to staying in touch and learning more from you, Kingshuk. Thank you again.
Thanks, man.
Now I see it's been 2 hours, so we should apologize as moderators.
Sorry.
But it has been a very entertaining talk. Not your fault, our fault, Kingshuk. And I am actually happy that
it's nobody's fault.
Recording can stop and then the discussion can get more informal. Recording can stop by the admin and then we can get more informal.
I don't know if we should do I think for many reasons, maybe we take it to a different platform.
But multiple Addas have attended, the same thing has happened.
Okay. Kingshuk, we will let this prerogative be Kingshuk's. Do you want us to stop recording and get into an informal?
Yes, stop recording. I'll tell you why. Because during my December colloquium, what happened is in my university Zoom, my friend, Shanko's friend as well, Satnam, joined from Sydney. My professor joined from San Francisco and Singapore. And Zoom thought it was a collaborative hacker attack from multiple bots. And Zoom canceled all of them. And so many, and then everybody was
even Kingshuk, you can stop sharing screen.
Yeah.
Right, and I think yeah, maybe the admin is not available to stop recording, so we'll just call it a day. We'll continue to have the conversation.